and we're looking at graphing absolute values and parabolas today. So you might have graphed these by making a table before, but we're going to be looking at vertex form today for all of our graphing. So first for a parabola, we're looking at something in this form. It says y equals parentheses. So we've got this quantity here, x minus h squared, and then plus k. So and h and k are constant. So they could be like 1 and 3 or -4 and 7. So our vertex is always h comma k. So notice it says x minus h, but our h is a positive here, and then a plus k here and says k there. So these two guys are opposite signs. The axis of symmetry is going to end up being x equals h, and the graph is going to have a U shape with a pattern of 1, 3, 5, 7. So I'm going to kind of show what that pattern would look like. I'm making a random point over here in quadrant 1, and I'm going to call that point h comma k. And maybe I'll use a color on that so it kind of stands out. So that's going to be my h comma k is that point. And again, this is just random, right? And it's random because I want to show variables. And then the way I would do that U-shaped pattern is from this point, I would go up 1 and over 1. My next number is 3. So now from this point, I would count up 3 and over 1. My next one's 5. So I would count up 5 over 1. And then I would mirror that on the other side. So let's see, up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1, up 5 over 1 on the other side. And I would draw my parabola shape in. So parabolas should be a real curvy shape. It's not a bunch of straight lines. So your parabola is going to go like this. It's going to kind of loop through those. It's making a U. My axis of symmetry would be that line down the middle, that if I folded it along that line, right, if I folded this side in and I folded this side in, they would match together. So the other kinds of graphs we're looking at are an absolute value. So absolute value graphs are going to have absolute value signs. And this graph right here, when I'm looking at a parabola, it's going to have a square. So that's what we're looking at here. So this one's a square. It's going to end up being a U shape. Twos are curvy. We're going to end up with a U shape. We're going to get a different shape for an absolute value. So interestingly enough, our vertex is the same. It's HK. Axis of symmetry is x equals h. So we're going to make a random h comma k on this one as well. I started up really high on this one, but it'll still work, even if I'm way up there. And my pattern for absolute values is 1, 1, 1, 1. So I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and then I mirror it on the other side. And then we'll go ahead and connect. So absolute values make a V. So they have a V shape here, U shape here. Again, one way to remember that is absolute values are like straight lines. It's kind of like two straight lines together make a V. Whereas over here, our 2 is a little bit curvy and our U-shaped graph is curvy. So absolute value graphs are going to be a V, parabolas are going to be a U. All right, so let's go ahead. Oh, axis of symmetry on this one. Let's draw that as well. This is my axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry will make more sense as we work through these problems. So on my first one, I just have y equals x squared. There's no number in my parentheses to find. For h, there's no number outside. So it's kind of like if I had an x minus 0 squared plus 0. Since there's nothing there for h and k, my h and k are nothing. They are 0, 0. So let's go ahead and start our graph in the middle. We're going to skip axis of symmetry now. Because it's squared, we have to decide, is it going to be a U or a V? And so this is going to be a U shape. It's a parabola, it's squared, and my pattern is going to be the 1, 3, 5, 7. So whenever it's a U shape, it's going to be 1, 3, 5, 7 today. So that means from this point right here, I'm going to move up 1 over 1, and then up 3, and it's from this point that I've already made that I'm counting up 3 squares. So from here, I'm counting up 3 over 1, and then up 5, and that's all the points I can fit before I run out of graph. So now I'm going to go ahead and mirror that on the other side. So up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1, and up 5 over 1. So I know I'm making this look really easy, and I know it's a lot slower when you graph on your own. So if you have to pause this video, go ahead and do that. Axis of symmetry goes right down the middle. So that would be this line right here. and that cuts my parabola in half vertically. If I folded the left and the right side of my parabola together, they would match up on that line of symmetry. So I've got to think, how do I write the equation for that? Well, it's crossing my x-axis and it's a vertical line, so it's going to be x equals a number. And because it's crossing my x at 0, it's going to be x equals 0. Okay, on the next one, we have y equals a quantity x minus 5 squared. There's nothing outside, so I'm going to write in a plus 0. So that means my vertex is 5, 0. So remember, it's always opposite sign here, same sign here. My shape, because it's squared, is going to be another u, and my pattern's a 1, 3, 5, 7. So let's go ahead and find 5, 0. Here's 5, 0 right on my x-axis, and then we're going to do that same pattern. Up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1, and up 5 over 1. If you're not sure if you're making these correctly, just show your teacher your parabolas. We'll be able to look at it and immediately tell if you're graphing them right or not. We're really good at this. So this is what my U shape looks like. So I want to connect that with a smooth curve. Again, when we're doing these parabolas, they should be a smooth curve. And then remember, our line of symmetry is that line down the middle. Because it's vertical, it's going to be an x equals equation. It's crossing my x-axis at 5, and so it's going to be x equals 5. You might see a pattern between these two where you don't really have to show any work, and you can just write down your axis of symmetry right away. It's very important also that you don't write down just a 5. So it is an equation for the axis of symmetry. We're looking for an equation of a line. If you just write down 5, that's not the equation of a line. All right, let's go ahead and flip it and keep working on the back. Feel free at any point, if you really think you're getting the hang of this, to just pause the video and then go back and check your answers later. So on the next one, I have nothing in my parentheses with x, but I have a plus 6 outside. So my vertex is going to be 0, 6, and I could write that as x minus 0 squared plus 6 if I wanted to, but I think it's enough to say there's nothing over here with x, and then there's a positive 6. So we're going to start at 0, 6. It is a U shape again because it's squared. It's a parabola. So because it's a U, it's 1, 3, 5, 7. And that pattern would keep going on with odd numbers. Let's go ahead and just see if we can refocus this a little bit. I think with my hands moving, it's kind of throwing the document camera off. So we're going to start at 0, 6. So 0, 6 would be right here. And we'll graph as much of the parabola as we can fit. It's up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1. And then we're going to mirror that on the other side. Go ahead and connect with a smooth curve. And my line of symmetry right down the middle would cross my x-axis at 0, right? This is 0 on the x-axis. So x-axis goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We crossed it at 0. So it's going to be x equals 0. Okay, on the next one, I have a positive number inside. So remember, we've talked about opposite sign, same sign. And so my vertex is going to be -1, -2. So we'll skip axis of symmetry for now. My shape, because it's squared, is still a U. And my pattern still a 1, 3, 5, 7. You don't have to put the dot, dot, dot. If you skip that, we'll be okay with it. So -1, -2 would be down here in our third quadrant, and then we'll make our pattern again. So again, today, always a 1, 3, 5, 7 pattern. So up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1, and I'm counting from this point, from the last point I made, it's up 3 squares over 1. And then from this point, I want to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. And then I'm going to mirror all of these points on the other side. And then connect with a smooth curve. Sometimes it doesn't look quite perfect, and that's okay too. And then our vertical line down the middle is an axis of symmetry. And let's see, it crosses our x-axis at -1. It's a vertical line, so it's x equals -1. All right, we're getting there. We've got 4 more left. So remember, absolute values have the same kind of pattern for vertex and axis of symmetry. The only thing that's different is our shape and our pattern. So like on this one, I have nothing inside my absolute value with x, nothing outside. So my vertex is 0, 0. And so my shape is a V and my pattern is 1, 1, 1. So let's go ahead and start it at 0. Up 1 over 1 on both sides. That's a lot of points. And these should be straight lines now. And axis of symmetry, I find the same way. It's still right down the middle. It's crossing my x-axis at 0. So here's my negatives for x, here's 0, here's my positives. It's right in the middle at 0. So x equals 0. All right, next one is y equals the absolute value of x plus 4, and then plus 0. So opposite sign, same sign. It's negative 4, 0. Remember, we talked about that on the front side. And then our shape, because it's an absolute value, is still a V. Pattern is still 1, 1, 1. So let's go to negative 4, 0, and a 1, 1, 1 pattern. These are easy to draw, but man, it takes a long time to get all those points in. So here's one side. Let's do the other side. All right, an axis of symmetry would cross here. It would cross my x-axis at negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So that's going to be x equals negative 4. All right, last two. So on 7, I have nothing inside with my x. Outside is a negative 3. So it's going to be 0, negative 3. That's where we'll start it from. It's absolute value, so it's still a V shape with a pattern of 1, 1, 1. So let's do that pattern on both sides. So the most important thing in any math class is that you're doing all this independent practice. You do not learn by watching other people do math. So make sure that you do your in-class and your homework. Use your class time. And we are crossing our x-axis at 0. And so my axis of symmetry is x equals 0. And our last problem. This says an x minus 2, but it's opposite sign, same sign, so 2, 7. My shape is still a V. My pattern is still 1, 1, 1. So let's go to 2, 7. And then a 1, 1, 1 pattern. So again, feel free to stop notes when you're watching them, ask for clarification from a teacher. These are meant to be a resource for you, and you are still welcome to ask questions. So this one crosses at 2, x equals 2, which you kind of knew if you can figure out that pattern between my axis of symmetry and my vertex. So that is it for our 10-4 day 1 notes. Day 2 is going to look a little bit more complicated. We'll look at some different patterns and some interesting stuff going on. Good luck on your assignments, and please ask for help if you need it.